Hello, co-artisans. My name is Shonda, and welcome to my channel, Under the Needle Quilting and Crafts. So, Saturday the 20th was National Sew a Jelly Roll Day. Now, at first, I wasn't going to participate because I really had no business. I had no business participating because I had a lot to do that day, and I was going to be going away the next day. And we were going to be leaving at like 4 o'clock in the morning, which meant I needed to like wind it down and kind of be in bed by 8. So, and I had chores to do because, you know, like if you're going to go away, when you come back, you kind of don't want to come back to like dishes and bathrooms that need to be cleaned and stuff like that. You kind of want to come back to a house that's already been, you know, it straightened up and cleaned and stuff like that, right? So I wanted to get my chores done, and I've got like 20 plus works in progress already. So I really did not need to start anything new. But I woke up Saturday morning. Well, the night before, I was like, okay, if I do this, I am going to use my stash, right? Because I have this stash of batik strips, right? So I had a bunch of 2.5-inch strips, and I had a bunch of 1.5-inch strips. And so I did the math, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to do, you know, just the basics where I sew 5 2.5 strips together into a strip set, cut those into, you know, blocks, and then put 2 blocks together and make half square triangles. That's what I'm going to do, right? And that was the plan. But, so I was like, if I get up the next day and I feel like participating in sewing for National Sew a Jelly Roll Day, that's what I'm going to do. And I had counted out my strips, and I had like 66 strips. So I was like, cool, I'm good, right? Because I'm going to need 60. I knew I was going to need 60 because I was going to make 12 strip sets because these are half lengths. So each strip was 2.5 by like 21 or 22. So it was half a width of fabric. The flashes. So, I knew I had a plan. And I was going to do 12 strip sets, 5 strips per strip set. And I was going to end up with, 24 blocks when I got done. I'd have 24 blocks, and I put my stuff into a 4x6. I think initially I was going to do a 3x4 inch setting, right? I think that's what I was initially going to do. But I decided to do a 4x6 because I thought that would just be too small to do 3x4. So, okay, so I did all the math. I was ready to go. I got up Saturday morning. It was like 8 or 9 when I got up or something like that. Maybe 7, I don't know. I did some chores. And by the time I got ready to sit down and sew, it was like 12 o'clock. It was noon. And I knew I wasn't going to have that long to sew because I still had to cook dinner for the kids. Not dinner for that Saturday, but I like to make them something that they can eat on while I'm away. And so I was leaving Sunday morning. I was coming back on Tuesday. So I wanted to make sure they had food for Sunday night and Monday night. So I figured I'd make a big pot of chili, right? Right? I make a big pot of chili. The kids like my chili, and I'd be good to go. So I knew I had to do that too. And I still had to pack and all that stuff. So at best, I knew I was going to have like 4 or 5 hours, right? But I'm like, I've already got my plan. I've already got my strips. I'm ready to go. Can I get this done in 4 hours, right? Because I think I can. I think I can get this done I think I can get this quilt top done in 4 hours. And if I don't get it completely done, I know I'll at least have all my blocks done, and I should have my blocks sewn into rows. So I might have to, when I get back, just sew the rows together, and that's it. So I'm excited. I'm like, okay, it's noon. Let's give it a shot. So I get down here, and I'm just barrel racing. Now, I'm kind of going off faith here because these strips, they are in my stash, but they were not cut by me. Most of these were not cut by me. Most of those strips I purchased. There was like one of the quilt shops that I purchased from, they had thing during the panorama where they had their customers send in strip sets of a 1.5 inch strip and a 2.5 inch strip, just half widths. So, and they would pair them together and they would be the same. So you'd get two strips. One is 1.5 inch, one is 2.5 inch, one and a half inch, one is 2.5 inches, and they'd each be 21 or 22 inches long. And then that sewing, that fabric shop had they would sell them or they would swap them or something like that, and they would make something. I didn't participate in any of that, but when it was all over, when it was all said and done, they had all of these strips still that they were selling for pretty dirt cheap. And so I bought a pack of the batik strips. And that's how I got most of these strips. And then a couple of them, some of them came out of my personal stash, right? So I'm putting them together. And as I'm putting the strip sets together, I'm realizing that some of the strips are not a full 21 inches. And I need the full 21 inches, right? I need all of it. I need all of it. And some of the strips were a couple of inches short. And then I realized that I was not going to have enough 2.5 inch strips. So I had to stop everything because I'm like, okay, I need to figure out what I'm going to do now. So I was like, okay, well, 2 1.5 inch strips will give me the same width as a single 2.5 inch strip. So I'll work some of those in, right? So what I decided to do was I built 6 strip sets that had a 1.5 inch strip at the top and bottom, and 3 2.5 inch strips, or 4 2.5 inch strips in the middle, right? And then I did another strip set that did a 1.5, 2 2.5s, a 1.5, 2 2.5s. I did 3 strip sets like that. And then I did 3 strip sets where I had the 2 2.5 inch strips on the top and bottom and the 2 1.5 inch strips in the middle. And I did 3 strip sets like that, right? And then I finally got that done, because I had to do the math. I had to make sure everything was going to be fine, whatever. Now, I kind of chose my strips randomly because that was like kind of the point, was I needed to be fast here. So I did not take the time to make sure that the strips were perfect, because a lot of them were not. Like, these were cut by a bunch of random people. And everybody cuts a little bit differently. And so, I could see that some of the strips were wonky, but I was like, I'm just going to go with it and sew. And so it took longer than expected, because now I had to stop, figure out what I was going to do, come up with a plan, do the math, make sure I was going to be fine. And I had to, figure out how I wanted to do the strip sets, if I wanted them all to be the same or not. And so that took me some time, maybe, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes that I spent stopping and figuring. And then on top of that, I had an extra seam that had to be sewn, right? Because I'm sewing 2 1.5 inch strips instead of 1 2.5 inch strip. So that's 12 extra seams that I'm having to sew. And that's 12 extra seams I'm having to press. So then that took some extra time, right? Some extra time for that. So I was pretty bummed out. I called it a failure. To me, it's a fail. It was a fail for me, right? Because I knew I just shouldn't have done it, right? If I really wanted to sew, I should have just picked up one of my many, 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 many works in progress and worked on that. And that would have been a much more effective use of my time than me starting something completely new for no reason. Except I didn't want to have fear of missing out. I didn't want to have FOMO, right? Because I didn't do it last year. I didn't do it the year before. I didn't participate. And then the next day I'll be on Facebook or wherever, and I'll see, everybody's little quilts and what they did and their progress. And I'm like, whatever. So, I didn't want to miss out. So I participated, and it did not go as planned. It did not go as planned. Like, I literally spent probably a solid 45 minutes the night before planning everything out. And I decided I was going to be super random. I separated the 1.5 inch strips from the 2.5 inch strips. And I said I was just going to reach in. I put all the strips in a bag. And I decided I'm just going to reach in the bag and grab a strip. And the only way I'm not going to use it is if it was the exact same color. And then I might not use it. Other than that, I was going to use it. And that was kind of how I wanted to go about this thing. And yeah. So I ended up, and I had recorded everything too, right? So my plan was to record myself doing the whole process. So the second I sat down to sew, like I had my camera going, and I'm like, this is what I'm doing, and these are my strips, and I talked about my planning process and everything, and I showed myself doing all the sewing, and I showed myself doing all of the pressing and the trimming, all of it. And at the end of the day, I got the blocks done. So I was able to, in 4 hours, get all of the blocks done. I got my strip sets made, pressed, cut, and put my half square triangles together and got all my blocks made. I got the half square triangles pressed and sewn and pressed. But that was as far as I got. And so it was a fail for me. It was a fail for me because I could have done, I think it would have been a much better use of my time to do something else. But eventually, a week later, it took me a week to get back to it, right? Because when I don't know, it's something about when I travel and I go away, when I get home, I don't really want to sew. And I don't know why that is. It's something I never really paid attention to until now. But I've noticed that anytime I go away for a couple of days, when I get home, I don't sew very often. And since I've been back, that was on September 20th. So I left on the 21st and got back on the 23rd. And the only thing I've sewn since then was finishing this blanket, finishing this quilt top. So it's not even completely done. I've just got the quilt top done. So I've got another whip I have to add to my stash. Now, that being said, I've never made a scrappy quilt before. This is the first time I've ever made a real scrappy quilt. Every other quilt that I've made, I've used a fabric line, right? As far as if I'm using so I'm either using 1, 2, 3, or 4 fabrics, just 4 different fabrics or something like that. Or I'm using if I'm using yardage, I'm using 4 different fabrics or 2 different fabrics or something like that. Anything that I've done that's scrappy hasn't really been scrappy because I've always used a pre-cut line. So to me, that's not a real scrap quilt. If you're using a jelly roll from a specific line and you're cutting that up, yeah, it's scrappy, but it's really not, right? It's all from the same line. This is the first time I've ever just chosen random strips and sewn them together. The only thing these things had together the only thing they had in common was that they were all batiks. So I ended up putting this together. I did finish it. And this is what it looks like. So, all in all, I'm happy with it. I'm happy with it. And I think it is just the right size I think I have some minky or a piece of fleece that I can use to back this because it is only, how long is it? 60 inches long. It's less than 60 inches long. It's like 59 and a half. 59 and a half. So if I know I've got like 2 yards of Minky or something like that. So I'll be able to not have to like piece anything. Yeah. It almost do a yard. No, I think a yard is pushing it. I'm just so stingy with fabric. It's 40 inches wide. Yeah, so I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take like a piece of Minky or a piece of fleece and put it on the back of this. I've got a piece of orange fleece, I believe, somewhere over there. And I think the orange would be really complimentary because there's a lot of orange in this quilt top. I mean, there's a lot of colors in this quilt top, period, but there's a lot of orange in here. And so I think the orange fleece, I've had that orange fleece for years, and I think this will make a great backing for this. And then I won't have to piece anything, and I don't have to use any batting either. So I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put some fleece on the back. I think I am just going to... I think I'm going to stitch on the diagonal. The way this quilt is set up, I think I'm going to do some straight line stitching diagonal and just kind of follow the diagonal lines that are already in the quilt and just add, so I'll stitch in the ditch or stitch near the ditch on all the diagonals, and then I'll just go in and fill in some extra lines, some extra lines of quilting. So I think that's what I'm going to do. I think that's what I'm going to do. So yes, I have a quilt top, but I could have taken those 4 hours and did a small project and had it completely done. Or I could have taken those 4 hours and gotten significant progress done on an existing work in progress. And I think that would have been a much better use of my time. So although I like what I ended up with, and although this is a first for me because this is the first scrappy quilt I've ever made, I do wish that I hadn't done it. I do wish that I had just worked on something else. Started a small project and got it done. Because, even the planning time I spent, the 45 minutes of planning I spent, I could have spent organizing my whips, or I could have spent that time, working on one of my whips, And then the 4 hours I spent the next day, same. And then the, hour and a half it took me to sew the blocks into rows and sew the rows together into a quilt top, that is time that I could have spent working on a work in progress or another small project, something I could have finished. Now I've given myself another whip. So for me, this is a fail. But anyway, that's it for me, guys. Like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.